Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. His end was drawing near, and he knew it. He stopped here on the way down the Mount of Olives and paused over the glorious overview of the city. It would have been even more striking then because the magnificent temple was still standing. The Gospel of Luke tells us, as he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it, and he said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes." What a powerful demonstration of what might be meant by pure in heart. This was a time we would expect Jesus to be obsessed with his own survival and safety, but instead, his heart is moved by the tragic future that he foresaw for the city and its people, and it reduced him to tears. The church here, known as Dominus Flavit, means the Lord wept, and it memorializes that poignant moment. It's built in the shape of a teardrop that symbolizes how his compassion for his people transcended even his own self-interest in survival. But there's an even greater example of pure in heart. It's just down below us, the Garden of Gethsemane. The Garden of Gethsemane moves me as no other place in the Holy Land. The trees here are amazing. No one knows how old they are. Olive trees don't have rings like other trees to reveal their age, so some claim these trees are as much as 1,500 years old. We know a little of what went on here near the end of Jesus' life, but there is so much we don't know. But Christians understand that his struggle here was for nothing less than the fate and the souls of all humanity. In the garden, we found Jesus agonizing in a cosmic struggle. It wasn't just a scared man facing death. It was a man facing the burden of sin of humanity. He was taking nothing less upon himself, and we can only begin to imagine what it must have been like for him to face that prospect. No wonder he cringed and said to God, "Isn't there any other way?" In the midst of his agony, I wonder if he ever looked over from here to see the pinnacle of the temple. That's where Satan tempted him at the very beginning of his ministry. And in pureness of heart, he refused that temptation. Let me tell you how pureness of heart has been very meaningful in my own cancer experience. Not through any pureness of my own heart, but that of others who sought God on my behalf, and I think saw something of God and his presence as a result. Greg Humphreys is a businessman in Virginia. For years, he's prayed every day when he arises at dawn for me and the Christian media ministry I oversee. Since I was diagnosed with cancer, he's continued those prayers and pressed upon me that he was convinced there was much left for me to do, such as programs like this. Nadia Lawand lost her husband on the operating table for what should have been a routine hernia operation. Then her 35-year-old daughter was murdered on a street in Miami just weeks before she was to take up a teaching post at Harvard University. These heartbreaks did not make her bitter, but drove her to seek God more intimately and to devote her life to prayer for others. When she learned of my cancer, she was moved to sometimes fast and daily pray for me that I would be spared. She would call me often and tell me how she could see me in her mind's eye as well and strong and following a new path of service that God was opening up for me. Soon after I was diagnosed, and in that state of being overwhelmed and confused, a leading cancer center advised me to immediately start heavy-duty chemo and radiation. They said to resign my job. Coping with cancer would now be my full-time vocation, and they didn't give me very good odds of making it. At this time, unknown to me, 2 family members spent 3 days fasting and praying for me. One woke at the end of the fast at 3 a.m. in the morning. He was obsessed with a word he had heard on a CD days before about an alternative cancer treatment. He rushed to the computer, did an internet search, and found therapies that I am convinced saved my life. Now, there was no dramatic spiritual experience, but in each of these examples, through their pureness of heart and selfless caring, I'm convinced we saw something of God in His leading. As I see it, pureness of heart, for some cancer patients at least, and that includes me, might mean being open and willing to question the accepted wisdom. And that leads me to say something I do only with great hesitation, because I am not a doctor, and I can speak only from the underside of personal experience. But I know I would not be here today were it not for medical science and some of the standard medical treatments. But at the same time, and equally important, in fact, possibly more important, I know I would not be here today if I had relied only on medical science and standard cancer treatments. I have great respect for doctors, but I also realize that there is more that doctors do not know about cancer than what they do know. I've come to believe that for many of us, to have the best chance to thrive in the midst of cancer, we come to a point where we simply have to take charge. Take charge even though we're frightfully aware that we're not in control. Is this making any sense? I never try to tell anyone how to have their cancer treated, except for this. God has given us an immune system, and it normally and routinely takes on the cancer cells that develop in all of us. So no matter what treatment you decide to accept, do everything you possibly can to strengthen your own immune system so it can better do what only it can do. Now that may include many things, such as nutrition, aggressive detoxification, exercise, rest, prayer, forgiveness, reducing stress, even reorienting your life as needed. Pureness of heart for me meant leaving the security of letting the experts make all the calls. Yes, I have to respectfully work with them, but at the same time, bear that burden to take charge, even if I feel like I'm not in control. As a result, I have no doubt that I saw through a glass darkly something of God's face and leading through tumultuous and uncharted waters. The promise given to the pure in heart is that they shall see God. And those I mentioned who sought God on my behalf did see something of God as He led us in the most unexpected ways. And I think of it like this: we were made to see God. And when we can see God, or perhaps when others can see God on our behalf, then can we not live with anything and find the strength to face whatever confronts us? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.